6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and this is budget meeting number 6 for the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal, working on the 2019 budget. And we have an agenda in front of us here, and so the chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Mover, please. Councillor Hunter, seconder.
Yep.
Councillor Cameron, those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest here this evening, and what so, what is the general nature thereof? Councillor Hunter?
Pre-budget 5C, pre-budget approval for the hot mix paving contract to be awarded, because both Polka Paving and Tackleberry Construction did this job, and they're both bidding at our quarry, so.
Okay, so the minutes will, and have you filed with the clerk? Okay, the minutes will show the declaration. Are there any other declarations here? Okay, I'm moving on to item 4 on the agenda. Item 4, delegations and presentations. We have none this evening. And so now I'm going to item number 5. Item number 5A, budget to date with reserve schedule and updated capital plan. So we have the reserve schedule. I want to make sure everybody's got that in front of them, the reserve schedule. And then the updated capital plan was sort of later in the package. And just make sure everybody's got that in front of them, so that we're all looking at the same pages at the same time. And okay, so there they are. And so maybe just before we start, I'm going to see if I can get a few clarifications with a number of items on the reserve schedule. So I'll be asking a few questions just sort of to start it off. Ask the treasurer for a few questions. So I'm looking at this, I want to make sure we're looking at the right sheet. So it's the reserve schedule sheet that shows reserve and reserve funds 2019 draft budget. Is that what we're looking at here?
In your package, yes.
Okay. So the first question, I'm going to look at the 3 columns on the left margin, and the environmental services line, low lift, 3522 is the line item. Now there's an adjustment there, adding 11,963.55 to that reserve, so that at the end of the year it comes to 61,387. Is that 11,965, is that the residual from the operating budget?
It is, yes. After the $20,000 was transferred into the reserve fund, that was the surplus of the operating budget for 2018.
And the $20,000 coming in is down on the line marked raw water supply system, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And I guess where I have my trouble here all the time is that we're using 2 different names. You know, we call it the raw water supply system, and then on the one above we call it the environmental services low lift. But anyway, I just want to get that clear in my head. And now going further down that same column, the industrial park wastewater, we're adding in 2,351.51. Again, is that a residual from the operations?
No, the $2,300 is the capital levy that was collected in 2018, and so it in budget, whatever was collected in capital levy gets put into the reserve as part of the budget process.
Now, what is this capital levy?
It's part of the rate system. It's collected through a rate system, and there's a specific value associated with the capital levy that's rated against the users, and then that's kept separately. Whatever's collected in there gets put into reserve.
Is the same explanation for the 3,200 underneath it?
No, the 3,200 is a different situation.
Oh yeah, the 3,200 came from that discussion we had at the last meeting, which was the net.
It's the net difference between the surplus of the system and the deficit of the wastewater system that this budget was was supporting, or this fund was supporting. So
Okay,
it's the
so
net
then,
difference.
going a little bit further down, the Spencerville wastewater, we're adding in 43,316 there. So what was the source of that 43,316?
Again, it would be the surplus at the end of 2018,
Oh, surplus operating?
yes.
Okay.
Because we had no capital.
And then the Cardinal wastewater, the 33,994,
Correct? Same thing?
same thing?
Yeah, and these are all pre-audit.
Yes, yes.
Hasn't been confirmed that these are the numbers that
Yeah.
are,
And then the Cardinal water, it's a 38,435 draw from the reserve, right?
Correct.
Into the operating. Okay,
yeah,
all right. So the column that, the third column from the left, which is the pre-audit December 31, 2018 balance.
correct,
So those are the balances in each of those accounts. And we're budgeting the fourth column to go in.
correct.
All right, and we're budgeting to go in on fire department vehicles. In the original presentation that we had, we were budgeting to put in 50. Now we're budgeting to put into 120 because of the 70, right?
That is correct.
And then going down to winter control, the original presentation was that we would put in 20, but we took that out because we're trying to balance. Right?
Exactly, yep.
Okay,
Correct.
so those are the budgeted in amounts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that clears up the questions that I had in my mind. Does anybody else have any questions here? I'm gonna go one further then before I wear out my welcome. So going over then to the sixth column, which is the budgeted transfers out. In the first presentation that we had, and I'm down at the line marked Public Works.
Mm-hmm.
In the first presentation that I had, we were budgeting to take out of the Public Works Reserve, we're budgeting to take out 172,215. Now we're budgeting to take out 271,215.
Right, the one item was the $99,000 for the excavator.
99 for the
Has been
excavator.
added to that,
It's the one that I had forgotten.
yeah.
See, my memory is good, but it's short. Okay, so that puts that in front of us. So I guess the lesson to draw out of this is that we're budgeting to transfer in to the earmarked reserves. We're budgeted to transfer in 361,950, and into the segregated reserve funds, we're budgeting to transfer in 670,000. Right? So all told, we're budgeting to transfer in 1,032,000, and then skipping over to the sixth column, we're budgeting to transfer out 598. Okay, now does anybody have any questions with what and why we're transferring in, or what and why we're transferring out? Okay, so it looks like no questions there. All right, so now, where am I at? And we got an updated capital plan here, so can you just match us up that budgeted out one column with our capital projects plan? Just help us match those two up.
Well, you've got basically your transfer out of 319, but then you also have your grant money of 220 currently as well. Then you go down to 295.15 if you're looking at water and wastewater inclusive.
Okay, so just give me a,
So there's,
okay, so let's take this in kind of an orderly way. Let me just see. Fire department, let me go back.
No.
I'm kind of slipping
now,
down.
now if you're, can I just interject a little bit? If you're trying to match it with the reserve fit schedule, it
Yeah.
won't, it won't.
Oh, it won't?
No, because this is specifically the funding for capital. The reserve schedule incorporates, especially with the water and wastewater, like trying to balance the budgets with deficits and surpluses. So in wastewater, any of the wastewater systems, the transfers in or out won't be showing here on the capital. This
Okay,
is
but
just
the rest should, except for
rest-
those two accounts.
The rest should, well, not just two accounts,
Pardon?
not all 5 accounts, Spencerville, 2 Cardinal, and 2 Industrial. And the raw water law.
Okay, so what you're telling me then is on the 6th column of this reserve and reserve fund sheet that we were looking at a minute ago, not all of those transfers out are for capital purposes.
That is correct.
Some of those transfers out are for operations.
That is correct.
Which ones are for operations?
So you can look right at the very beginning, the police costs would be operating. The building department reserve would be operating.
Well, just a minute now, so that's the 8,000, right?
Yeah, the 8,000 for policing. The 13 for the building department. The
Okay.
11,832 for the planning, that'd be operational.
Okay, so in every one of those cases, it's because the approved operating costs in those 3 line items is not high enough to cover what is budgeted to be spent.
Not in all 3 cases, it's definitely for the building department. The planning reserve, that's the residual of the $40,000 that we had set aside for the OP review. And this is the balance of the costs associated with that review. The $8,000 is coming from policing reserves, and it was just to level out the same amount of policing costs as we had in 2018. Last year, in 2018, we took out 10,000, but this year we only took out 8 to level the costs out.
Okay,
So there was no impact on the budget, on the taxation.
and the building department reserve where we're budgeting to take out 13, that's because, and that may not
It
happen,
may not happen. correct.
because if we get more intense activity
Yeah.
and generate more revenue, it won't be necessary.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then now go down to the ones we're taking out in capital. So the first is 30,907 out of the industrial parkland,
Correct, that's
the purpose?
for the storm sewer, that's at the beginning of your capital projects listing there under the Walker Street storm,
Walker Street storm, just give me a second to find it.
transfer from reserves, at the top, very top of your budget, of your capital sheet.
Okay, just a minute now, why can't I find Walker Street storm?
Third line down under your work in progress.
Oh, third one down. Oh yes, there it is there, 3907. We're gonna transfer that from the reserve, okay, go ahead. Got that one.
Right. Now, as I said, in terms of your industrial wastewater, and any of your other water wastewaters, are not really showing here on the capital, because there's no capital in those particular departments. The Johnstown water wells is an operational, is part of the operating budget, that you're pulling the $9,000 out, potentially to do a water well drill.
A
On
drill,
one of the
okay,
properties.
that's to drill a well.
Yeah,
Okay, what's the 10 above that, the 10,882?
that would just be a deficit in that particular, system. The
Well, because we
wastewater
have
system.
not charged enough rate there.
Correct,
Okay, so,
which is down from 2018. I believe we had originally in 2018 anticipated a budgeted surplus, deficit of 18,000.
so why are we not getting our rate correct there?
Well, I think we've been increasing that rate fairly significantly over the last few years.
So through the chair, back in 2017, we came with an action item that showed the discrepancy between the expenses and the revenue in the industrial park wastewater. And in 2018, we did a rate increase, which we knew wasn't going to cover all the expenses. And that's why we looked for 1 to 2 years to take from the water, projected water surplus to offset that. And then just this last month, we've done another increase in the industrial park wastewater, and we're projecting about a $10,000 deficit for 2019. And the hope would be that we would do another increase in 2020 that would start to balance that system.
Okay, but on the second column, we added 2,351.
That is correct. The way that the bylaw schedule is set up, it has a cost per meter rate for operation and maintenance, and a specific capital levy that is to be going into the reserves. And that's just, that's the way that the bylaw is set up. Really,
Okay,
because we're in that deficit, it really should have been used to offset the operating, but
okay.
the bylaw structure is set that way.
Okay, so now I'm down to the 220, the
Yep.
gas tax. We're taking 220 out of the gas tax.
Yeah, and that's going against the Weir Road resurfacing project on the capital sheet here.
That we're gonna be talking about a little bit later. The 17 is for the steps at the pool,
Correct?
and a 6950.
That's just a deficit in that system.
Okay, so when we go then to our capital projects, 30,907 for the Walker Street, 158 for the Walker Street Road portion,
That's coming out of your public works.
right? 17 for the stairs for the pool. That's it, and that's a total of 206 from the top.
Mhm.
And then coming down, 14 coming out for the truck, tandem axle plow truck,
Correct?
99 coming out for the excavator. Okay, everybody following this? Okay. Okay, questions if any? All right.
I just, strictly question for clarification. I thought at one time we had got the Smith Road culvert down to 150,000.
No, we took 100,000 off the original budget was 300 and we dropped it to 200.
Okay,
No, just a minute, I'm not following. Where's the Smith Road culvert?
Put the third line down, down.
Oh, yes, there it is there. And what is it now? It's 200, is it?
It's now 200.
That's the pre-budget estimate, yes.
Okay, but, and so that Smith Road culvert is gonna be financed? Oh,
Correct,
totally from
taxation.
taxation,
Yes.
right, okay, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's me for now. I just want clarification. But I thought it was 150.
Go ahead.
Yeah, where the chair, I thought it was too, I thought we had another engineer in there, and he quoted us, I thought it was 150 or 175, or 130, I thought. There's another engineer, we asked for another engineer report, is that right?
Through the chair, we had two revised quotes, but I think they're right in around the 175 to 2 all in. So that's why we only dropped it the 100,000 to 200,000.
Okay, so it was originally 3.
It was originally 3.
Revised to 2 on the basis of new information.
That's correct.
And then we still, these are still just Class D estimates.
That is correct.
We don't have tender, but
That's
we
correct.
did order pipe or something.
Yes, we have pre-ordered the pipe and the pipe has arrived.
Okay,
It's in stock.
okay, so other questions here now? Going on,
I'm still having a little bit of a problem with that pedestrian bridge at a hundred, well, it's now a hundred thousand. Still,
now where's that one on here?
that's right under bridges and culverts.
Pedestrian bridge, Gallup Canal pedestrian bridge at 150, to be financed how?
From taxation,
Well, I don't see that.
right here, 100, well, no, there's already, 49 has already been allotted, so, which leaves 101.
Oh, yes, okay.
So there's 100,000 to be brought in from taxation.
Now, where's the 40, oh, the 49 is work in progress, right? That we
Yes.
put in.
Yeah,
for
we
last-
had it in the 2018 budget and nothing was done in 2018 due to
Oh,
the
okay.
costs.
All right,
Yeah,
But he-
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, we were directed to issue the tender, it closes on April 2nd, we'll have better numbers once that closes.
okay. So the
Okay.
tender, okay.
so there's still a,
There's still hope.
thank you,
April 2nd.
kind
close.
words.
April 2nd closing, okay? Anything else now before we go on? All right, so I'm gonna set these two sheets aside. Now I'm on item number 5B, which is the pre-budget approval for the plow truck. Now, before we start that discussion, I just wanted to tell council that a couple of things. First of all, it's very seldom that you see only one response to a tender. And it's a long time since I've seen one. I'm very uncomfortable with a tender where there's only one response. But because there's only one response, and I couldn't clearly recall all of the issues that surround that, I spent some time this afternoon, I wanted to get some advice on how you handle this kind of a situation. Because it is a touchy situation. And I'm just gonna read my notes from this discussion this afternoon. In view of the fact that we have received only one response to our tender for the supply of a plow truck, and that I am nervous about responding to a single tender, I sought advice from a very experienced source, well-versed and well-experienced in procurement processes. Back to the basics. Basics of contract law. Offer plus acceptance equals a contract. A tender, I'm told, is a form of contract. The township, when it puts out a tender, is offering, there's the offer, the township is offering to purchase a plow truck if the supplier meets all of the criteria in the tender document. If he's met all of the criteria in our tender document, the supplier has basically accepted our offer and met the conditions of our tender offer, and therefore, there's an implied contract in place as a result of the tender process. Now, a tender is open until it's closed. Once it goes out into the marketplace, you've placed an offer in the marketplace, it's an open tender, and it's a touchy process. For example, if you make any changes whatsoever to that tender, everybody must know about it, and you must advertise that there's been an addendum to the tender in the same manner in which you put the tender out. The tender is still open until it's closed, either by cancellation or by acceptance of the offer that came in by the acceptance. Once closed by cancellation, the tender must be substantially revised before it can be re-tendered. You cannot just not accept a tender and then re-tender. The tender, because that's considered to be a breach of contract. You must revise the tender substantially before you go to rebid, to re-tender. Otherwise, we are considered to be what they call shopping the bid. You've got the bid, you put out the offer, he accepted your offer and supplied what you asked for. Now you're not satisfied, you're not gonna accept him, you're gonna shop his bid around by re-tendering. It's a no-no, and it exposes the township to liability. During the open period, during the period of the open tender, we were very limited in the scope of our activity. You cannot contact any of the suppliers that are potential suppliers or the other suppliers. We're told in the briefing note that there were 6 potential suppliers that picked up tender forms. For whatever reason, they chose not to tender, but this tender is still open. We can't contact them to say, why didn't you respond? We can't question the tender document. It's our tender document. We put it out into the marketplace. We cannot question that document. And nor can we question the lack of market response. So that's what we're faced with. There are many different reasons as to why the market did not respond to our tender, none of which can be investigated during the open period of the tender. Now, I'm no lawyer, but I'm telling you this is what I heard from a person who's very experienced in the tender process and understands what you're dealing with. So, if the supplier has met the specifications of our tender document, and if the quoted price is within reasonable range of our budgeted amount, the supplier is deemed to have accepted our offer to purchase, and a formal contract is in place. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I know from previous experience that this is a very tender situation and it has to be dealt with in the greatest of tact and diplomacy, considering the potentialities for legalities here. So, what we have in front of us tonight, basically, is a situation where we went to the marketplace, and I'm turning now to 5B in our package. We went to the marketplace, we published through Merck. Merck is only one. Who watches Merck, who doesn't watch Merck, a whole different issue. And the marketplace responded with one bid. Very uncomfortable position for politicians to be in, but we done everything good. And we have a briefing note in front of us with a recommendation. And with those few words, I'll open the table for discussion.
When you said that we cannot question the tender during the open period, can we now question?
No, because that tender is still open until this table
Okay.
either
gotcha.
closes it
Yeah, okay.
by canceling it, closes it by either canceling it or by accepting the tender that we have in front of us. There's only 2 ways to end that open period.
I follow.
Now, I'm gonna turn to staff. Have I given my council any bad information?
No, I don't believe so, Mr. Mayor. That's a very good summation of the position that we find ourselves in. And by means of reassurance, I can tell you that the tender document was developed based on past experience of our staff, and based on past experience of tendering this type of vehicle. That the tender response did provide us with what we asked for, and it was within budget.
There you go.
I haven't given any,
I don't believe you have.
I was very careful to take careful notes. And I've been through this once before, can't even remember where it was, whether it was here or in Red Lake, but I know that it was a touchy situation. It's very difficult for elected officials when they're only faced with one option. Deputy Mayor.
Did we at some point, that I forget, I know that we discussed piggybacking with county council and having our truck be part of their process. Did we ever decide against or for? My memory forgets, but I know the discussion happened, but.
Okay, so I'll just turn to staff and ask them, I mean, I know that we've talked at various times about piggybacking on various county tenders. Was this ever given any consideration on this, for this particular procurement?
Through the chair, we did look at the county tender. Their truck specifications are somewhat different with some of their features. So it would not be, we would not require the same unit that the county uses.
So you're saying that the tender specifications that the county would, or that, and I'm assuming that county doesn't always specify exactly the same each year to year to year.
I certainly can't say that with certainty, but I would anticipate that the truck specs are fairly consistent year to year. You wouldn't want to deviate very much in those specifications.
Well, except I do recall during county budget discussions, I do recall that while the basic unit might be the same, there are some differentials that county sometimes, but not all the time, builds into their heavy vehicles. And apparently it's got something to do with changing boxes to tanks and during different times of the year. Some of their plow trucks are changeable overable and some are not. So I don't know what that means in terms of specification, but I got from our budget discussions that some of them are different.
Okay, so you're speaking to the ones that actually can carry water in the summer months?
Yeah.
Water tank, okay.
Which we wouldn't need.
We just have one truck that is capable of carrying water in the.
And changing over.
That's correct.
Okay. So in answer to the deputy mayor's question, did we because they could, county could issue two different specifications for two different kinds of vehicles. So did we at any time consider hooking onto their process?
We did consider it, but we felt comfortable enough in tendering on our own.
Okay. Answer to your question.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just one other comment with respect to that issue. We were also advised that it would not likely be a cost-saving measure. It's not a bulk purchase in the way that you think of bulk purchasing. The only advantage might have been a shorter delivery, somewhat shorter delivery, but price-wise, we probably would have ended up spending more, just because their spec is that much higher than that.
Okay. Now, one other question. You say it's within budget? Do we have a? I read the briefing note, it's all underlined here, but did our briefing note tell us what we had budgeted?
Yes, through the chair, the first line of financial considerations, the estimate on the capital project was $250,000.
Tender opening price was $243,000.
$243,000 before HST, correct.
Other comments here? Chair's looking for direction now. Chair's still looking for direction. Councillor Hunter.
I know we only had one tender here, but I don't really see what the problem is here. We got a tender on an international truck. This is replacing the Peterbilt truck, so this turns us all into an international fleet. A lot easier to maintain. One GM, so but we're pretty near into an international fleet. Now it's a lot simpler for the staff when you're running all the same type vehicles for stocking parts and filters and stuff. They're easy to go to the shelf and pick your filter off because you're running the same ones. I think it's a good price. I kind of wondered when we were quoting $250 to start with, where we're going to be lucky enough to be able to purchase a plow truck at that price, and I think it came in a little bit under it. So I think whether it's one tender or 10 tenders, I think we got a real good price on it here from a company that we've dealt with for years and has always given us excellent service and maintenance to the vehicles we bought from them. So I'm all in favor of the tenders, but it's too bad we maybe didn't get more tenders in, but obviously the other companies probably figured they couldn't beat his tender that he was putting in, because they all know what tenders are. All kinds of truck tenders have been out over the last 2 or 3 months, so they all see other tenders open, and they know pretty well what other ones are bidding on them. So I think quite obviously they didn't want to bother going to wasting the time and expense of drawing up a tender and filing it. So
And you regard that as to be a kind of normal course of action?
well, when you get ones going out bidding on tenders, you quite often see it. You see it even on our road tenders when you see them being open. You see down the line people, culvert tenders and stuff, if you end up with just 1 or 2 tenders, because other ones, they see what they're tendering and they just don't bother going to all the expense of drawing up a tender because they know they're not going to compete with them. So
Right.
it costs money to draw up.
Yes, that's true.
And just to piggyback on what Councillor Hunter says, I do know that I used to do it myself, create a tender, just to have a look at what the other people were doing, to be quite truthful.
And then just not close it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
just cancel it?
yeah, unless I want.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
You would
I
respond.
would respond, and that gives me the right to go and look at all the tenders.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly with, when you're dealing with government, which
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Okay, Chair's looking for direction here. You have a recommendation, Councillor Dilwell?
Just on this quotation, I mean, it's Greek to me, but the 10-speed, high-low transmission, whatever, 200, are we accepting that 211,000? Or $2,100 savings? Is that off the 241?
Finish it, Rob.
Yes. Through the chair, yes, that's the adjusted low bid at 241,750, which gives you the total cost of 246,04.
With that 2,100 off?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, when we're buying this vehicle, like I'm out of this business for a while, a 10-speed high-low range, is that automatic transmission? No.
Through the chair, it's manual.
Manual transmission?
Wow, it's a lot of gears.
How do you want to deal with it, folks?
I knew we accept the tender.
I will move her. And the recommendation is the committee recommends that council award the
Accept the
tender.
recommendation.
Beg pardon?
I move we accept the
The recommendation, yeah. Looking for a seconder.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Hunter, or Councillor Campbell. Further discussion? Further discussion?
Is there a rush to close? To close, is there a time frame that we have to finish this off to, I mean, short of being budgeted, would it, everybody's been contacted that could possibly submit. We were not expecting to get any more submissions at this point.
Tender has closed,
But it's already
closed.
Okay. I thought that it was said that it was open
Well,
until we made this
it hasn't
decision.
been awarded, but there's no further bidding. There's always an end date to the number of bid, to the.
Okay, so I misunderstood, okay.
Yeah, the process is
Forget what I
open,
said. We're
but
good.
the bid period is closed.
Good.
So, Mr. Mayor, is it replacing a truck?
Yes.
It is, yes.
And it's junk?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, let me put it this way, it will be declared surplus to township needs and probably go to an auction to bring what we can get for it as residual value.
Which you expect to be pretty low.
Well, depends on the marketplace again. You know, it depends. You go to a Ritchie Brothers auctions, if the right guys are there looking for the right pieces of equipment, it can go good. The other thing is you can expose it to the marketplace on your own lot through newspapers and media, and you might get a better price at your own lot on a walk-by basis or a drop-in type basis. You never know. Because if you expose it in a Ritchie Brothers auction and there's 7 vehicles the same and there's 2 bidders there, you might not get a lot for it.
And Richard Brothers and Kemple, the last ones that have them there, they've certainly got top dollar for the stuff.
Have they?
I wouldn't wanna pay the price some of the stuff went for.
This doesn't qualify for Barrett Jackson then?
No.
But it's pretty nearly an antique, so.
So is that, Mr. Chair, is that going out of service, Mr. Grant?
Through the chair, no, it's certainly not going out of service until we have the new one in hand.
Yeah, but after it is going down the road?
And, once we receive the other one, that is the plan.
Okay, and then one further question. If the bid price and the tender is accepted tonight, well, if the bid's accepted tonight and the tender is closed tonight, what's the delivery time?
The delivery time, we have 45 weeks from the time that the documents are signed.
45 weeks?
Wow,
That's a year.
is that,
Well, winter season.
was the delivery time specified in the tender document?
Yes.
It was.
We specified that kind of delivery time.
Okay, so-
What we didn't want was to have that extend out farther than that.
Yes, and second question, was the successful bidder present at the tender opening?
No,
Does the successful bidder know that he was low?
yes,
He does know that he was low. Okay, does he know that he was sole bidder?
yes, you would have, yes,
Okay. So we're operating in an upright fashion.
Yes.
Open and transparent. Okay. Chair's looking for direction here, about to call the question. About to call the question on the recommendation, moved by Hunter, seconded by Cameron. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on then, to pre-budget approval on the hot mix paving and impact of the increase in the gas tax funding. So that's, document 5C that you have in front of you now?
It is.
Okay, so we have 5C in front of us. And 5C is a 2-pager, or it's actually a 3-pager. All right. So, again, we have a recommendation in front of us, 3-part recommendation. Committee recommends that council, 1, use the one-time top-up of the federal gas tax in 2019 to complete an additional 1.8 kilometer section of Pittston from County Road 22 to Hutton, and award the hot mix resurfacing tender to Coco Paving at a cost of $910,303.24. And 3, authorize staff to execute contract documents and approve $3,696 as contingency to be used at Director of Operations discretion should any unforeseen issues arise. So, open for discussion here. Chair notes that Councillor Hunter has left the table. Discussion? Councillor Dilma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I'm a little confused on the table 1 and table 2 with the culverts. 12,000, how many culverts is there? Say on table 1. Like, are they $6,000 a culvert and there's 2 culverts, or how do we break that down?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to defer to the road superintendent. Do you know how many culverts are on the Weir and Pittston on those sections off the top?
About 20 culverts, of which most of them will be replaced.
So I have $12,000, so what are we saying? $800 a culvert, $1,000 a culvert?
Well, if there's about 20 in the entire sections, then 22, we're looking a little over 1,000, which is similar to what we charge for entranceway
So
culverts.
it's 1,000, so there's 22 to do the whole thing?
For materials, yes.
Okay.
I guess my question about that is this, and I know that county is, either has put out the tender for 21, County Road 21, or will soon do so. And I also know that in that tender that's going out, there are a number of culverts to be replaced. But is it not better practice to replace your culverts the year before you do your hot mix paving? Because don't we always get the slump? And it's a shame to get the slump at the culvert after you've already put the hot mix down and basically put your top layer on, and now you've got a culvert. And if there's 22 of them, is that not considered best practices to do that work a year ahead?
Through the chair, I've certainly seen it both ways. It's my understanding that the county is doing it the exact same way. They're gonna be replacing culverts and doing their paving this year on 21 as well.
Okay, so then the next question becomes, if we're doing them both at the same time, which I just find strange, if we're doing them both at the same time, is there a construction technique that is used to either minimize or eliminate the slump that occurs at frost time and in the spring? Is there a construction technique, and if so, is that technique used by all contractors or supervised by us, or are they replaced to our satisfaction? How is the tender document worded to ensure that we don't get that slumpage?
So through the chair, the culverts will be changed in-house. There is a technique, a frost taper, that is used to mitigate those slumps or dips from occurring. Some of it, in certain cases, there's the other part of the issue is the actual depth of cover on those culverts can be an issue where you can use that frost taper and try to build up that road a little bit, but you don't want to build up the road too high, then we're having issues with too steep of ditches. So there is some play in that end of it, but typically through that frost taper technique and the whatever additional cover we can put over that culvert should mitigate to eliminate the majority of those situations.
Okay, and you just clarified that the replacement of these 20 culverts is going to be done in-house, it's not part of the tender?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
That is
So
correct.
we have an even greater degree of control if we're the ones that are doing the work.
That is correct.
That puts an awful lot of pressure on our road superintendent, make sure it's done right.
That is
That's
correct.
We know exactly who to turn to
That
next
is-
spring.
There you go.
Compaction, 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 what can I say?
Well, why is that in the table two then, the 22,000, if we're doing it?
Well, it's in there because when we budget a capital project, that's part of the capital project. So I didn't want you to assume that the low tender at 719, and we budgeted at 746, that, you know, our budgeting wasn't accurate. It is very accurate. We've incorporated the material costs for those culvert replacements as part of that capital resurfacing program.
And of course, if I'd used my head at the same time as using my eyes, I should have seen that culvert replacements and contingency was below the
tender.
line mark tender total. Yeah. My apologies there. Okay.
Could I just ask one question, just a clarification? When was the last time Pittston Road, or maybe I should just rephrase that, was Pittston Road, some of it not done just recently?
Yes.
That is correct.
And how many kilometers roughly?
1.25.
How much?
1.25.
One, okay,
That was County Road 4040 Young, right?
Correct.
yeah.
And that was 1.25?
1.3, 1.25, something.
Now, are we going to leave that section when this is done?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just a continuation.
That-
Remember, we did Heineman Road in two
Yes,
sections
yes,
as
yes.
well.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair's looking for direction. Chair's looking for direction still. There's a recommendation on my page.
There is.
Mr. Chair, have we used Coco Paving, has Coco Paving done work for us in the past?
Through the chair, we have used Coco. Well, Coco was bought out Crookshank,
Yeah.
and that same crew is typically the crew that works in this area. So we've used Crookshank in the past,
Same crew, basically?
basically.
Oh, is it really? Same engineer? Yeah.
And I think everybody on that job
Dan,
last year
Aaron.
was.
And I always forget the guys that run the pavement group, but they've been around forever.
And now they're just got a different branding.
Yep.
Chair's looking for direction.
So, in the recommendation where it says, use the one-time top-up, in 2019 to complete the, additional 1.8, is that the addition, like, is that the piece that we took out and deferred before?
Correct.
Well, I think Pittston Road sort of goes from 44 to 22. We did 1.5 to Young. Then the first part that's on top here, which is the 3.4, the 3.4 is from Young to Hutton, is it not?
Correct.
And then the last section, which is the smallest provisional section, is the 1.5 from Hutton to County Road 22, is that right? So this is 1.5, this one is 3.4, and last year, what you're saying, 1.3?
I'll call 1.3.
1.3? So then that will end up being Piston Road from 44 to 22 done.
So, but I think my question was, we're using the topped up money from the gas tax and we're adding something in that we had decided to defer off before, correct, previously?
So through
So we're adding it back into the budget and
through
we're
the chair,
deciding
that
to use
is correct.
the
That
gas
is-
tax money you're suggesting that we use that gas tax money for something that we had deferred off before.
That is correct.
And that's not, we're not obligated to do that, that's a provisional in the tender. So we can modify, if you're of a mind to, we can modify the recommendation to remove the first item of the recommendation, if you're of a mind to leave that top-up section of the federal gas tax in reserve. This section here. In other words, to pick up on Deputy Mayor's question, the implication of the first part of the recommendation is the 220,000 from the gas tax grant, is it not? Or is it a portion of the 220?
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
So the provisional for that remaining portion of Pittston Road came in at 190, and the gas tax top-off is gonna be 220. So essentially, what happens is we are able to reduce the capital spend by 30, where is it? 31,650. So if you take advantage of that one-time top-up, we can finish up Pittston Road and also reduce taxation supported funding by 31,000. And if I may, just a little further than that, let's recall that it's going to be less expensive on a per kilometer basis to do it at the same time as the rest of it than it will be to defer and do it later. Almost certainly.
Okay, but I think the larger picture that's looming in the background here, and in a way, I was reluctant to deal with the agenda in the manner in which it's presented here, but I decided to go ahead in the long run. But maybe I'll interject here right now. The larger picture that's looming in the background is, and maybe it appeared on 5A, which, yes, it did appear on 5A, is that we're still looking at either we're still looking at a 1.81 residential tax rate increase. And if this recommendation is tied to that, then we want to know that right now.
If this recommendation carries, that 1.81 reduces.
That 1.81 reduces?
That's correct.
Tell me it reduces to 0, and you'll find out that this meeting will end real quick.
Sorry, I can't do that.
Well,
It takes 31,000 off of the 101, so we're down to 70,000, which is 1.25.
so we're
So-
101 right now.
And that's gonna save us the 31
Take the 31 off, will bring us down to 77,
and 70.
or 70,000, and it's 1.25,
And the 70 represents 1.25.
correct?
Well, how do we get to 0?
So, how much, so we deferred off Young to 20, not Young to 22, Hutton to 22, and we added back in the 202 that was deferred, is that, we added that back in, and we're using the gas tax to do that. So, but we don't have to add that back in this year. If we don't want to, we could use the gas tax to fund the original section before we, the Young to Hutton portion, could we not?
Yep.
Well, we're under a bit of pressure, but I'd like to see the staff facing a bit of pressure too.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the staff has been under considerable pressure since our original pre-budget presentation in December. And while the Deputy Mayor's point is correct, that we have this one-time gas tax bonus that we could certainly use to fund the current paving or other projects, it's staff's feeling, and with this is reflected in our recommendation, that one-time bonus funding should be used to make sure that we don't defer more capital, so that in 2020, we're not sitting here having this same discussion faced with a $3 million capital project
So.
that we can't fund.
Go ahead.
And I think that from our perspective too, if we felt that it could be deferred for 1 year and it would be okay to defer it for 1 year, and we were trying to save taxpayer dollars, that if we're paving something that could actually last 1 more year without needing to be done, then I think it would be seen as a waste of a taxpayer dollar, wouldn't it?
If I may, again, through the chair, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that staff ever said that it didn't need to be done. We were just looking for ways to follow council direction and bring that tax rate increase down to where it needed to be. I think we heard Deputy, I know Deputy Mayor, or sorry, Councillor Hunter is not involved in this conversation, but I think we did hear him say, in the initial discussions around the council table, that Pittston Road was the worst road in the township. And we accelerated Weir Road because it has a higher traffic count.
Okay, so let's, I mean, what we're talking about here is $70,000 on a $7 million budget. And the difference between a 0% increase in the rate and a 1.25% increase in the rate. The problem is, and I'm gonna get blunt about it, the problem is that $70,000, in my mind, has to come out of the operations. And the reason it has to come out of operations is because operations last year really, with all due respect, got out of hand. Operations last year went from 5.796 budgeted to 5.796 budgeted to 5.960 spent. The operations went up by close to 200,000 over budget. And now, what we're saying, and the 2019 that we're being presented with, the 2019 operational budget that we're being presented with is 5.94, it's very close to last year's 5.96 actual. What we're saying is, help us find 70,000 out of that. And basically the discussions and issues are off the issues are off the table. But there's still that major issue remaining, and it's not gonna go away. Yes?
So, before we get going down that road without one of our members actually at the table, let's deal with the, you know, pavement issue at hand so that we can get him back and have his great input at this discussion then as well.
Fair comment. And so the way you would do that, I'll give you a mechanism to do that.
Approve what's there.
Well,
Move the recommendation.
yes. Or theoretically, the chair could entertain a motion to defer this question to the last item on the agenda. And that would bring the member back to the table.
So 5 what?
Beg pardon?
5C?
D or E?
It's 5C, right?
5C, defer 5C till later.
So can I can move forward that we recommend that we defer the decision on 5C until after, make it 5F then?
Yes, so the way I would word the motion is that discussion on item 5C be suspended and deferred, and final decision be deferred to 5F on the, well, you can't say 5F because there is no 5F. You can say until the last item of discussion. Are you making that?
Yeah, I'll move that forward, sure.
Okay, so I have,
That gets,
looking for a seconder here.
I'm in.
Okay, and that's Councillor Dillabaugh. Okay, so just want to make sure that the clerk has the wording here. So Do you wanna read it back as you've captured it, or do you want me to?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the way I've written it is that Deputy Mayor Deschamps moved and Councillor Dillabaugh seconded that the decision on 5C be deferred and moved to the end of the discussion items on the agenda.
Okay, that's what's on the floor. There's a mover and a seconder. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's carried. All right, Councillor Hunter, you're back in the game. Welcome back.
Minus 70.
Now we're at item 5D, which is the Latimer Road project cancellation, proposed budget changes. And I guess the first question that jumps to my mind, is that not the 70 we're looking for?
That's it right there. Actually, it's 75.
Rhetorical question from the chair. Actually, it's a question from the chair. Is that not the 70 that we're looking for? I know, I mean, it was originally in the capital section, but
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
go ahead.
We're hearing that due to the difficult winter we had, that the, some of the surface treatment that we recently applied is in need of some additional bolstering, shall I say. And so that's the reason for the recommendation, is simply that we had a difficult winter. We know that there's additional pavement preservation work required, and that was flat out bid.
Okay, so here's my question then. I've got my draft summary in front of me, and you're proposing that that 70, which was in the previous presentation as capital, would now come back in as operational, in addition to what I've got in front of me here?
That's correct.
I don't think that, well, I'll let the council speak for themselves. What line item would you add it to?
It would be in the Public Works.
So you would add it to line item Public Works, and so the draft budget for Public Works would go from 1,697,699, increased by 70.
75.
Increased by 75 to 8, 9, 61, 70. 1,772,699. Is that what you're proposing? Well, council, now the decision is at the table. You know both how to get to zero, and you know the implications. Councillor Hunter.
Now I'm back in here.
Welcome
If anybody drove any of our roads in the last little while, you know where this $50,000, this $75,000 is gonna go. Because got roads that are breaking up bad. The township roads crew's been drawing gravel for the last 3 days, working on roads. There's potholes coming all over. If you've been down Armstrong Road lately, or double surface treatment road breaking up on Armstrong, it's gonna need some repairs to it. Now, a lot of other roads around are in the same shape, so, I know, Mr. Mayor, you'd like to get to a 0% budget. I think this is totally unacceptable. We have a average of 2% cost of living increase every year, and if we don't keep crawling up a little bit, we just end up having to, 2 or 3 years down the road, have a 5 or 6 or 7% increase. And I think people 1.25 or 1.3 we're at now, I think that's a very acceptable rate to be at for taxation rate. And basically, we're over, it's less than that. When you roll them all together, it's what, point something or other, it's less than 1%, but it's not max out to. And the only part I can see is saving is the 25,000 going into winter works for the extra material we've needed. We have a reserve fund that I was on council 8 years ago when we started putting money aside to have this, and this was exactly why we put that winter work reserve fund there, that we could draw on it when we did have a year that we had to draw more material than normal. And so I could see maybe going that way with the 25, but I think the other 50 for the patching and repairs, I think it's gotta be put in. If not, we're gonna be in a lot worse, we're gonna be in the same shape. Your operating budget isn't gonna be what you budgeted for. When it comes to the end of the year, you're gonna be overspent, so you might better charge for it in the first place and come in on budget, so.
Well, the implication there, though, is that your operations budgets are gonna increase by, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. Your operation budget is increasing from 5.7 million budgeted last year to 6 million budgeted this year. You're increasing your operations budget by $300,000. And I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable. Why, I'm very aware of the problems that appear to be occurring. I believe it's Rock Street, and you mentioned Armstrong Road. I'm getting people telling me that our surface treatment program last year really wasn't all that successful, and I turn to staff again and say, what has happened here? We spent good money in good faith last year on that, and for staff to say to me, well, we had a bad year winter-wise. I mean, we live in Canada. We know that we have to build for Canadian climate and Canadian winters, but for a surface treatment program to only last over less than 1 full year, what happened here that you're coming back to us now asking for $75,000 in repairs?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's not correct. We're not asking for $75,000 in repairs. We're asking for $50,000 to be reinstated into a surface treatment repair system that was initially in our budget. It's not new money. It's not due to the bad winter. It's just best practice.
But is it not embedded in the 1.697?
Not now, no. We pulled that $50,000 out on council instruction during the budget meeting.
Well, what is the 1.6, what are we getting for the 1.697?
We have to go back to the detailed budget and talk about vehicle repairs and talk about salaries and talk about all the other things that go into public works besides road repair.
Well, we know that on a vehicle repair side, there, you know, that line item of the budget was kind of overrun last year for a number of reasons that were pointed out to us. Why are we likely to think that that same thing would happen again this year?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, it's under budgeting doesn't get us anywhere. And while there's no question that the operating budget was overspent last year for a myriad of reasons, we can reduce the budget by $70,000, but if we still have to do the work, then we have the same conversation next year. And it's overspending and under budgeting have the same effect.
Well, Chair's looking for direction. I made my pitch. I'm still married to the 0% increase in the budget because of the tremendous increase in revenues that we've had from other sources. I think we've had in my mind, when I look at the same page that everybody else is looking at, and I look at the two main sources of, well, not main, but the two big sources of revenue, which is, the two main lines that we're talking about, which is taxation revenue, 55, 81, 198, and 70. Those two items, compared to where we were last year, or those two items even compared to the two items just previous to them, the increase is there. I mean, that 638 take off 130. What's that, 500,000? 500,000 is the increase. I mean, that's almost 10% increase in dollars. Where on earth would we be, what on earth would we be talking about here today if that excess money hadn't come to us from increase in assessment? What would we be talking about? We wouldn't be doing half the program that we're doing right now. And so to say, we not only have to do this program, I mean, we wouldn't be here if that windfall hadn't accrued to us. Gotta take that into account. I mean, some of this program that we've already approved would not be on the table at all if that money hadn't come to us. Now we want to not only put this full program on the table, but go beyond it. Council's got to make the decisions now.
Mr. Chair, we're lacking, I guess, the 75,000, you want 50, and where's the other 25 going? Is it going back out? We're not gonna use it at all? What you're asking?
Through the chair, the action item suggests that the $25,000 be added to our fund for winter supplies, winter sand and salt.
Winter control.
Yeah.
So why can't we just take the 25,000 out of winter control and the 50 out of our reserves, and the 70 and the 50,000 out of the reserve in public works for this?
You're depleting your reserves.
Pardon?
You're depleting your reserves. Your public works reserve right now is only about, at the end of 2019, you would be taking another 70-some thousand. We're only at 248 right now. So if you take another 70,000 out of there, you're down under 200,000 in public works.
But we do have,
To buy trucks, to do roads, to do everything that you have to do in public works. We only put 50 in every year, so we're not actually putting enough into our public works, into any of our reserves. You know, you're putting in 361, but you're taking out 304. So if you're gonna take out another 70, you might as well not put money in.
well, I just have a hard time when I see grand total 6,510,000 pre-audit in our reserves. And
Well,
we can't afford to take 50,000 from somewhere out of the reserves.
Some of
That's the
those,
thing, really.
can I speak through the chair? Some of the reserves are dedicated to specific functions. So you can't look at it as a lump sum. There are dedicated reserves specific to water, wastewater. You can't use those for other purposes. So yes, you can take them out of the reserves, but once the money's spent, the money's gone. And if we typically don't put money into reserves on a regular basis, then every time we deplete them, we start to eventually we'll hit the wall. As Councillor Hunter said, we've done zeros, negatives, and then we had to do a 5. So we can do 0, but in 2 or 3 years from now, we'll be looking at 5. And the $500,000 additional revenue, MPAC places an assessed value on that property, it's appealable. So
Yes, I
don't
know,
count your
but-
chickens before they hatch, because invariably, we could be refunding on an overassessed value.
But that's a red herring, and it's a what if.
Well, if I
And
have
it
to,
may happen, I don't
Well,
wanna get
it-
into a debate about
it's
that right
very
now.
possible.
Yes, it's possible, but it doesn't matter how you cut the cake. You cannot count this year a 0% increase in the residential tax rate this year as a 0%. You got the money from a different source. You got it from increased assessment. The taxpayers deserve a break. They deserve a dividend from their industrial park. They deserve a dividend from the fact that we've been able to attract a major assessment. Now, if the major assessment, we end up kicking back something, and hopefully, we're going to put forward enough of a case to protect our assessment. Hopefully, we're gonna draw the full services of counties, I forget his name,
Mr. Pablo.
Mr. Pablo, we're gonna draw his full services to protect that. I know, I'm sure the county will wanna protect it. That's off the table for now. The money is $500,000 is 10%. At 50,000, at 1% generates $50,000 of revenue. 500,000 is 10% increase in revenues to the township this year. And I think we've spent it wisely. I mean, we've put a fair amount of it into reserves. We've definitely had one of the most ambitious, we haven't approved the tender yet, with one of the most ambitious roads programs. I'm not comfortable with an increase in the tax rate, not this year.
Mr. Mayor, there used to be a formula for working funds capital based on the amount of your taxation. And that $750,000 is sitting in there, hasn't moved in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been around. And is it possible to, I think we're down to 45,000 right now, shortfall?
We were at 70, I think, roughly.
Oh, and I thought the 25 was coming out.
Well, that hasn't been
Off Latimer
decided.
Road and going up against that.
That hasn't been decided.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't like touching, I know the line item you're referring
Yeah.
to. Working funds capital is 750,000, and, I mean, while I wouldn't want to touch that amount, I look at these earmarked reserves, because they're all in our operating account. I look at them this way. The whole purpose of working funds capital, the 750,000, is to give us cushion in our operating account at times when we're between a taxation, draws from taxation, if I can put it that way. It's a cushions, especially when we have our last, our tax bills come out in August, and we get a big chunk of tax money in, but by about February, if we didn't have this big chunk of reserves in our operating account, we'd be drawing our our account down close to nothing, really. So those earmarked reserves, they're called on this page, they're the cushion. But the 750 is part of that cushion. I just think there has to be another way around this someplace.
Oh, just a thought.
Yeah. I'm not,
I'll throw a curveball.
go ahead, where's the curveball?
All right, this, and whatever, you like it, don't like it, doesn't matter. We have a service delivery and efficiency review, dollar amount, I think it was $591,000.
$585.
$585 coming our way. If this is going to make delivery, plowing better, a road better, make it easier to maintain and keep it better, I think one could easily make an argument that you could take the 70,000 out of that amount. It doesn't reduce it by, it's less than 10, or it's just a little over 10%. You'd find your way to get to 0%, and you still have $500,000 to do service review with. And that way, we can do all of Pittston with our gas tax, which if that makes the most sense, that's great. We get Latimer done, it doesn't take a toll on our machinery or our equipment, it keeps the people that use that happy, and it comes as a solution.
No, Latimer is out.
Or sorry, we're using it for whatever
Yeah.
whatever it was decided that we're using that for, and it still leaves us at 515 or something like that, with service review money, which really is free money to review, or use. It's unconditional, we can use it as we see fit. So if that gets the solution where we need to be, and it takes the difficulty away from staff, and it takes the difficulty away from council, I think everybody's, staff especially, has done a really hard job trying to get where they need to be. I think we've done a good job getting where we are, and we've been provided sort of a little, two bonuses with the top up in gas tax plus the service review. Maybe we should consider taking the 70 out of the service review, and having a little less to work with from that.
Very creative. I hate to touch it, but.
I do too, but I mean,
But you
that's,
got a
it's
point.
kind of what it's for,
So you're taking the 70,000 out to bring it down to a 0.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we don't defer anything for another year, we're not gonna increase, we're not gonna push it off another year, it gets whatever done this year that needs to get done. We keep our lights, we keep our chiller, it gets us our plow truck, and it gets us where we need to be. We still have money to do service review, and we have deferred enough probably till next year. And we still end up with 500 and some thousand to do studies to find further efficiencies for the next several years. So
And 2020 is a clean sheet.
I think that gets us where we need to be.
Haven't heard much from the other folks at the table. Councillor Hunter sticking with his 1.25.
I don't care where we get the $70,000 from, just as long as we bring it down to a 0. That's my stand.
Well, I don't know just what the dedication behind that service
Unconditional.
money is. I think we've got to be careful whether we say it's unconditional or not. I think we've got to be careful how we spend it.
And you know, until Deputy Mayor Deschamps brought this up. Well, no, I was worried because, that was me that talked to the minister. It was unconditional, but the intent was to use it for service delivery review. But it was also used to improve services,
But it's service delivery, so make your, and it's a small portion of it.
Yes.
It still gives us a lot, and if we use,
Yeah.
when we make the argument at a
We don't
further
touch the
meeting-
5, we only touch what's beyond the 5.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, and if we use it the right way, that 5 will still go further.
Yeah.
We'll get that back by collaborative effort. So by using 85 of it now, if it gets us where we need to be, let's use it.
Well, we really don't need 85 of it, do we?
Well, whatever
much
the
we
amount
need
is
of
that
it?
we need.
70.
Much
Oh,
we need.
50.
Director of Operations wants in here.
Mr. Chair, I think the CAO mentioned earlier that the railing tender is closing April 2nd.
Yes?
It may be advantageous to at least see what that tender result comes in at, where there may be some potential savings from that 101 from taxation.
Are you suggesting that we adjourn the discussion until after April the 2nd?
Yes, please.
And just through the chair, so my understanding is 70,000 is the happy place.
0 is the happy place.
0 is the happy
Se-
place.
My apologies, 70,000 off, where we are now, is the happy place, 0.
Are we agreed?
Yes, I think we are.
I think we are.
So, in all fairness, I think we should wait at least until after April 2nd till the tender comes in and we have an idea of where we are there.
We may not have to touch our 500.
Well, let's not go
I
there.
wouldn't, I don't wanna say, I think we should wait until the numbers are in on that particular project.
Well, and the big thing is-
I think there is,
You know, I mean, we really don't have a gun to our head to make decisions here tonight. And theoretically, we put ourselves under our own pressure. So, you know, I appreciate that suggestion. I'm more than prepared to entertain that suggestion here at the table. Basically, what the chair would need is the chair would need a motion to adjourn. That's what the chair would need. Well, I suppose we could defer the discussion. We're at 5D on the agenda. We could, the chair could entertain a motion to suspend discussion on 5D until the next meeting, and then we would move on to 5E.
If I may, Mr. Chair, it's actually 5C, D, and E that you need to defer because no decision was made on 5C.
Yeah, but we already, oh yeah, okay, I see what you're saying, yeah. 5C, D?
C, D, and E.
Oh,
You did the plow truck and you reviewed the reserve schedule. Good job.
is there any point of, I think the thing was maybe we could deal with the library board tonight.
If you like.
Hey?
If you like.
Okay, the chair's looking for direction here. I just said, wait, tell me what you wanna do.
I'd still like to make one more go at finishing this up. So, with the comment that I heard about savings, the possible savings for the bridge, coupled with my idea of taking the dollars out of spending, out of the service review, I would still make the suggestion that we move forward, and if there are any savings realized, that we put that towards some form of reserve so that it puts it in, and we get it done. Like, we could still be here in June trying to finish this up, waiting for stuff and having these discussions. I mean, we're gonna take it out of this if there isn't a savings. So why don't we take it out of it now and say that it's there, and if a saving comes in, then we earmark the savings back for reserves, and then we get this done.
Well, except for the fact that, well,
You wanna have 4 more meetings? Sorry.
If I may, just offer a suggestion, I hear what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, certainly, but, you know, admin finance is only 9 days from now. I mean, that's the next opportunity for this group to get together. We will certainly have these 3 items on the agenda for admin finance. We will have the information on the bridge by then, and perhaps it will go very quickly.
Is that what you wanna do? 9 days.
At 9 days, I'm fine with that.
That was the one.
Yeah, these decisions are committee recommendations at this stage anyway, not ratified until council on the 22nd of April, so.
We've got till.
that's right,
Really.
yeah.
We've got a month to get it.
Okay. Okay.
Can we still deal with the library though tonight?
Oh, whatever you like.
I would like to address that.
Okay, so then I need a motion to just defer item 5D to admin finance.
C
And no,
C
sorry, C and D to admin finance. Better wait, maybe should both pass that motion. We might be deferring 5E as well.
Oh, really?
Okay, I'm looking for a mover to defer 5C and 5D to the admin finance
I will
committee.
move that.
Have a mover and a seconder. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? All right, Trey, fair enough.
I don't think.
Good catch. Okay, so that motion is carried. So now I'm at 5E. Now, the library board. Well, look, there's a recommendation with that. Why doesn't somebody just get brave and put the recommendation on the table. There's not a lot of implication to it. Chair's looking for direction.
I will move that we accept accept as the recommendation is stated.
Okay, I have a mover for the recommendation as stated. Second.
I think there was some information on that in the purpose and the note that isn't correct. So
Oh, go ahead.
I have some notes if you'd like to listen to them.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so, we're talking about, draft budget, okay, that's the township portion, the repairing of that. But going on down, the bank account shows $25,000. But what they omitted, that's the revenue side, or the credits side, but you forgot to mention about the payroll has to come out of there. There's 2/3 of the quarterly payroll to come out of there. Part of that, moving on to the surplus,
No, where are you right now? Are you on the?
I'm on the last paragraph.
Okay, but are you on the,
I'm on 5E.
no, but are you on the, are you looking at the library, draft library budget?
No, I'm looking at the.
Oh, okay, go ahead then.
So, 5E, okay, and then flipping over, they're talking about, budget requests, but what happened in there was the, talking about the salaries. There was a comment made about the salaries, and the salaries, there've been, as Tim mentioned when he was here, there's a whole restructuring going on with the salaries. We're hiring a CEO who's going to have half the hours that the past CEO had. So that saving in those hours, in dollars, are gonna be passed on down to the frontline workers. So really, the payroll isn't gonna change.
Gonna stay the same.
And, yeah, exactly, and, and then in the surplus, there was a comment made about the surplus, and the surplus, currently shows $2,130, but at least 2 of the computers must be replaced. And that's being done right now, or rebuilt. But altogether there's 14 computers, and as old as 2012 and 2014. There's 4 laptops, 3 iPads, and needless to say, if they're public use them, and they get a lot of use and abuse, so we're currently in a campaign right now to, the girls are attempting to fundraise through the local businesses to replace some of those computers. So they, I don't know how it's gonna turn out, how successful it would be, but anyway, they're making an effort to do that. So we revamped, we recontracted the internet from Joe to Bell, and the reason for that was Bell only would give Joe so many gigabytes or whatever they give them, and so they were limited. So they went to Bell because they could get what they wanted in speed.
I know, but you still are showing a surplus here.
The surplus, part of
It
that,
may or may not exist.
no, part of the surplus, there was a donation made right at the end of the year for 2019, and it's included in that surplus at the end. It came in December, and I think it was $1,200 altogether. So, you know, that's part of the surplus, or
Well-
half of the surplus or better. So,
So your pitch is that, well, your municipal operating grant was, the original ask was 105,500,
yeah,
right?
That's really what he's asking.
yeah,
Right,
He wants that back.
and we're still asking for that.
okay, well, you should change your expenditures then to show even. Okay, and what's this briefing note is for 100, right? So there's a differential of 5,500.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so the question is, if you put that 2,000, you're showing a surplus of 2,130. If that surplus wasn't, if that surplus was a true surplus, you wouldn't need the 105. But you're telling us it's not a true surplus.
Part of it was donations made right at the end of December.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then there's still salaries to come out of that.
Yeah,
So that's really not there.
Well,
It's there, but it's really not there.
well, what he's saying is the actuals for 2018 are not correct.
Correct.
Where the actual shows revenue over expenditure of 608, 6089. You're saying that that number is not correct, because that's where the salary is gonna come out of,
No,
the accrued salary.
no, well,
In other words, your
all
20
the salaries would have been paid up to the end of December.
The 83,000 includes all accrued salary.
Yeah, and.
Oh, it does?
Yep,
And so what happens is, the treasurer, as she gives us our I think it was quarterly allotments, she divides that grant into quarterly allotments. At the same time, she takes out the quarterly payroll costs that they handle here at the office.
yep. Yep.
Okay, so,
So it's like the government, they give it in one hand and take it in the other one.
But
I'm
I'm
not
not,
gonna go there.
the 25,000 that's in the bank account currently, I will not be drawing anything out for 2018. I'll be putting in, that's money that's left
Yeah.
over as of the end of 2018.
But we still have, we've already accumulated 2/3 of that quarter of salaries.
You've got your first quarter and it's about 17,000 in payroll. It's about 4,400 less than last year's quarter. So you've,
Yeah, well, because of our CEO
Right.
leaving.
because the CEO left in the mid of January,
Yeah,
the payroll is $4,400 less
yeah.
in the
But
first
People
quarter.
have had to fill in that gap.
Well, the payroll's still $4,400 less than in the first quarter. So you won't be at 83,000, you'll be less than
You'd be less than
83,000.
83, like you're at 79 or something
Yeah.
like that now, right?
I mean, and they haven't actually got a CEO yet in place, so,
Right, it's advertised now.
It is advertised now, yes.
Through the chair, if I could ask a question?
Go ahead.
We're worrying about $70,000 here, and some people worry to get to 0%. The figures that we're looking at there, have you got 105,000 in those figures for the,
I have 105 in, yes. I have not made an adjustment until after this recommendation.
we've already basically budgeted 105,000 in there anyway, so why are we worrying over $5,000 to the library? If you want a library,
Good point.
And this, remember, this is
point.
2 libraries, not just
I know,
one, this
but I
is
say,
2
if you
libraries.
want libraries, it's $5,000 in there, it's already been figured into the line item here.
Well, it'll be a saving.
So it's 105,500.
They want to buy computers, they got 25,000, he just said how many computers, you don't buy many computers for $20,000, so they would have to replace a bunch of these, they're gonna have to replace them, obviously, it sounds like, if they don't get businesses to contribute and donate some to them, so.
And they've been rebuilding a lot of those old computers for quite a while now, so I mean, how much mileage can you get out of them, you know?
Okay, so going back to your point, so your point is that if the 105,500 is already budgeted, then let's just change the recommendation to say
Yeah.
that the library grant be 105,500.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so now, Deputy Mayor Deschamps, you moved the motion. So
Fine.
will you allow me to adjust that number in the recommendation?
I would love to hear Melanie speak.
I just find it really unfortunate that all departments have had to tighten their belts. And we added $12,500 to the library portion of our budget to do ramping and furnaces. And when I see a surplus in 2018 and a budgeted surplus in 2019 at the library, it tells me that we're taxing for too much money for the library.
So I think if
I'm sorry.
I may, jump in at this point, I would like to keep my motion the same as what the recommendation was and move it forward at the $100,000. That's what's on the table. I don't wish to recommend it. I wish to amend it. I wish to keep it the same as what the recommendation is.
You need a seconder still.
I hope I find one.
Yeah, I just add something.
Are you prepared to second the recommendation?
Not me.
Not you.
Can I just make a comment also about wages and salaries, there's a pay equity has to be done, and the cost, they think the cost is gonna be around $2,500. That was never factored in. And as a result of the pay equity study, there could well be an adjustment in the salaries. Plus, the grid hasn't been changed for 4 years now, so the pay grid probably is gonna, people are at that point where the pay grid has to be changed. So, there's several factors involved in that, and I failed to say that when I was talking.
If I may, when I looked at the pay grid, I believe that it adjusts, it is an adjustment every year. It gets an increase every year.
Not in the library.
I looked at the library document. It shows a 2017, a 2018, a 2019, and a 2020, and it shows the last time I was there, it was brought over and plopped in my lap and shown how it applies to how many years you worked there as to how you qualify and step up to the next level.
You move up to the grid, but I mean, the
Well-
grid itself, the basic amounts in the grid don't change. They haven't changed for 4 years.
You move along the grid.
They
See, in
move-
the township, the grid changes and they move along the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a half a motion on.
I'll second it.
You got a second. Counselor Hunter seconds. Okay, so now, the motion is that the committee recommends to council that the 2019 Municipal Library Board grant be $100,000. That's the motion. Further discussion?
Yes. No, you go ahead.
I just wanna, is that $12,500 in that too?
No,
No.
that's in addition to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to point something out here. The library board, or the library, has done an excellent job. Last year on their revenues, their actuals came in higher than what they had budgeted for, so they did a great job there. Their expenses were under what their 2018 budget was. And here we are sitting here penalizing them for doing a great job.
So you're gonna vote against the motion.
I'm going to vote against the motion.
Counselor Dillabaugh, where's your head?
Yeah, I'd like to give them the 105,500.
Well, then your choice is to vote this motion down, put a new one on the table. And I'm about to call a question on the motion. Hearing no further discussion, those in favor of the motion, please signify. I got 2. Those opposed, if any. Opposed to the motion. You get a vote.
Do I get a vote?
You got a vote. Okay, so the vote is 2 in favor, 4 opposed. So the motion is defeated. Chair's looking for direction. You're the chair of the library board.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
No,
I thought you were.
No, not the chair. No,
Oh,
no.
you're the council rep.
I am. Correct.
Well,
Tim's the
I-
chair.
And I think the recommendation would read that committee recommends to council that the 2019 Municipal Library Board grant be $105,000 and I think it's 500, is it not?
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Cameron looking for a seconder.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Dillabaugh. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favor. Opposed, if any? 1, 2. Okay, 4 in favor, 2 opposed. Motion is carried at 105,500. That gets that item off the table. All right, now, in view of the previous motions to defer C and D, we're at item number, we're at question period. That's, you gonna ask a question?
Well, I'm still on the library.
Oh, okay. Where are you going on the library?
This, our repairs, I know it says for Cardinal wheelchair ramp too, the 12,500. What else is out of that? How much is that for the ramp there, out of the 12,500, Mr. Grant?
Sorry, that's not
Oh.
Mr. Grant's department, that would be Mr. Spencer.
Through the chair, the cost that we had estimated, in the fall was around between 6,500 and 8,200 for the ramp.
Sorry,
8,200 maximum for the ramp.
Was that replacing the ramp?
No. That's just doing a facelift on it.
so, that's 82 in Cardinal and 43 here? Is that what you're saying for a new furnace and, water damage or something, cause you got 12,500?
Excuse me, I'm a little bit lost here. What are we referring to right now?
We got
Are you
12,000,
still in a briefing note?
yes, on the briefing note.
Oh, okay, just give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, so now, so catch me up here.
$12,500 or 9.45% increase due to the building repairs for the repairs of the Cardinal Library wheelchair ramp, replacement of Spencerville furnace, and the flooding issue. So I want to know how much are we putting in the Spencerville Library, mostly? And you're saying $4,300.
Through the chair, no, I didn't say $4,300.
Well, if you say
Okay.
12,500 as a budget, and it's 8,200 for the ramp, that leaves us only 4,300.
It's just an increase over last year, or more than that. That's just how much it's increased.
It says 14,000 if you read the side.
Okay, so let's go back to basics. Let's go back to basics. What Counselor Dillabaugh, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what Counselor Dillabaugh is trying to get at is what is our improvement budget for libraries?
No,
Total dollars.
for Spencerville Library.
Oh, for Spencerville Library.
Okay, if I can answer the question, if you look on, there's a summary sheet of the draft library attached to that, that gives you notes that tells you where the value of the 24,000 is. And I can't identify specifically whatever the 10,000 that's in there for regular upkeep is for both libraries, for snow shoveling and other upkeep repairs to the buildings. We allocated 9,000 for the wheelchair ramp in Cardinal, and we have 5,000 for the furnace in Spencerville.
You see where she's getting that?
No,
Okay, go to your briefing note. First page of your briefing note is labeled 5E, and then turn over 2 pages.
yeah.
The second last page.
No, it's a broad page, sideways.
Oh,
There it is there.
Oh, okay,
And you see where she's got library building repairs
yeah.
and $24,000? Last year's actual was 9,496, and this year they're budgeting 24,000. And the reasons are 10,000 for regular upkeep, which is about the same as last year, snow shoveling, etc. 9,000 for a Cardinal wheelchair ramp, and 5,000 for Spencerville furnace replacement. So you're getting the 10 from last year plus 9 plus 5.
Okay,
That,
Mr. Mayor, that kind of gets confusing because the library operation and then the portion that the township pays for the library
well,
are kind of all in the summary note.
and then you see that draft library. Myself, I'm not sure how much we should put into that building.
Keep it heated.
You mean the Spencer?
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
keep it
that's what I'm
heated.
getting at. I was there tonight, actually, before I came here. I went in the basement and so on, and we should try to find a new home, Mr. Mayor.
and as I indicated to Councillor
and-
Dillabaugh before the meeting, I
and
have
save
talked
this.
yesterday to VP of Royal Bank about the building across the street. and he and I have discussed it.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just to answer Councillor Dillabaw's question about putting money into the library, I certainly understand where he's going with that, but in order to realize any value from the sale of that building, we need to do this work, even if we're not going to use it as a library.
In other words, we've got to make it saleable.
We have to keep it ready for the market if we're able to manage a different way.
So it's a hanging issue that's not going to be solved at budget time. But I think Councillor Dillabaw's point is well made. And I know prior, I mean, I've been in there several times too. I mean, I think we've really outlived that building, in one sense or another. Okay, does that get your questions answered?
It is, thank you.
Okay, so now I'm moving on. Are there any other questions during question period? Director?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I forgot to mention this on Monday, and now that I have all of council here, I thought I would. The standard of care training for the mandatory or standard of care training for counselors and senior staff. I do have an instructor. The unfortunate part is that Monday evenings are out and Thursday evenings are out, but Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, the instructor would be available to come and do a presentation on the standard of care for municipal councils and drinking water systems.
Oh, 2 hours, 3 hours?
Anywhere between 3 to 4.
Oh,
Holy, wow.
and a Tuesday or a Thursday evening?
No, Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday or a Wednesday evening? Wednesdays are tough.
They certainly are, so I just thought, I didn't want a decision tonight, but just so you're aware, those seem to be the
Tuesday, Wednesday then?
Tuesday, Wednesday, and I do realize that those evenings are
These
not-
are mandatory, this is a mandatory training period for drinking water, quality drinking water system?
I would say it's highly recommended.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, can we leave that item?
You certainly can, I just wanted to bring it up so I didn't forget again.
Okay,
Finalize it.
yeah, yeah, or some other evening.
Yeah, even.
Okay, any other information to come before the council? I just one part. CEO McKinstry, there was a letter today from Enbridge concerning the natural gas expansion project. You indicated that you had circulated to everyone?
No, I had added to the council correspondence package that has not yet been prepared. I just sent the
Okay.
document.
So for the benefit of council, the basics is this, So this is a communication from Enbridge, recognizing the assistance that we provided to their sister company, Union Gas, before they amalgamated with Union Gas. And recognizing that our Spencerville project is still in their sights, if I can put it that way. But most importantly, it also transmits to us a copy of the regulations which have been now implemented under the Expansion of Natural Gas Act, which was passed in December. So the regulations are now in place. The letter from Enbridge indicates that the first 7 projects are going to be going ahead immediately. And talking to my Enbridge construction guy on about Wednesday this week, Enbridge has completely now absorbed the people from Union Gas. Their new structure is basically in place. All of their construction plans for the 31 projects that they had ready to go are in place. And so Enbridge is telling us we're going ahead with the first 7. So we'll see how things unfold from here, but it's another step in the right direction.
Are we in the top 31?
We're number 32 of 31. That's only because your council worked very hard in the last term to get there. Anyway, enough of that. There is no closed session this evening. The chair is looking for the motion to adjourn.
I just had one question before you go. Just north of Shanley today, there's a
Yes.
digger bearing something there. Is that fiber optics? I don't think it was a gas line because it
No,
wasn't
fiber,
yellow.
it was fiber optics. I went by it,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, on my way home.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Robertson, seconded by Cameron. Those in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Motion is carried.